Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, that is Science Unlocked. Now in our previous session we have talked about the concept and detailed process of photosynthesis. We have talked about the synthesis of proteins and we have little bit touched the concept of heterotrophic mode of nutrition in case of plants, where we have talked about a few things that are related with this whole concept in detail. So let's get into the details of all those terms that we have used in our previous session. The first one of them was the parasitic mode of nutrition. Now for this particular term, that is parasitic, will going to help you out in understanding the process where a particular plant will going to act on some other plant as a parasite, whereas that other plant will going to act as a host. For example, the example of amarbale or kaskata. Now the question comes that why does it require or why does it have to do this thing that it has to act as a parasite on some other host, taking in all the nutrition from the host, just like a normal parasite. This thing happens because these particular plants are lacking the main component, that is chlorophyll. So ultimately they do not come under the category of autotrophic mode of nutrition. So ultimately what happens is that they need to be dependent on some other plants. So that is how they act as a parasitic nutrition or parasitic mode of nutrition, as an example of parasitic mode of nutrition. Next that we have is the insectivorous nutrition, where a particular plant will going to actually be feeding on different set of insects, because these particular plants, in spite of being the green plants, cannot fulfill their requirement of food by the process of photosynthesis. And one more aspect that is important over here is the lack of minerals, especially nitrogen. As we have talked about the process of synthesis of proteins in case of different set of plants and how important this particular process is for the growth of plant, now it becomes essential for these particular plants as well to fulfill their requirement of nitrogen. So obviously the soil is lacking this particular mineral, so ultimately they have to do something, they have to choose some alternative apart from the process of conventional form of nitrogen utilization or protein formation, for which what they are going to do is they are going to feed on the insects to obtain the minerals. And one such examples that we are going to look into in the upcoming section is the pitcher plant and Venus flytrap plant. Now in case of pitcher plant, we do have a particular set of structure that is called as pitcher along with a lid, where this particular whole set works, this whole set of organization acts as a container with a lid. As a result of this particular container becomes a unique aspect of this particular plant as well. Now what does this container actually contains, because of which it acts in a different manner as compared to rest of the leaves of the plants? What they have is they have this cavity where they are going to have a movable lid on the top, so that they can provide a channel for movement of their prey, their insect which they are going to eat. And on the other hand they have the hairy structure inside it, because of which when a particular insect enters this particular picture or container, then in that case it is not able to move out of it, it doesn't allow it. As a result of that particular whole struggle of the insect, what happens is the plant get the stimulation, because of which it closes its lid, and ultimately the digestive juices which are present in the lid will going to digest that particular insect, providing all the nutrition from the insect to the plant body. And that is how the pitcher plant actually works. Once a particular insect inside the pitcher is going to get digested fully, it will going to get opened again and will be working in the similar manner for the next set of insect. In almost the similar manner, Venus flytrap also work, but there is one major difference that we will going to observe in their organization or their structure. In the previous section, that is the pitcher plant, we have a proper container like structure, that is the pitcher that we were calling up it. Here we will find that there will going to be a bilobed structure which is connected from the center. This yellow line is actually acting and giving the idea that it is going to be connected over here. And these tentacles on the upper section, or the you can say the edges of these lobes, are actually the one which will going to work as a spine, which will going to hold the insect inside it. Ultimately what will happen, these hair which are present in the lobes, these particular hair will going to keep on producing sweet smelling component, or you can say sweet smelling juice, because of which the insect will be attracted. Once the insect going to come and sit over here in the lobe, it will close and it will look like this, which will not going to allow the insect to move out of it, so that ultimately it will going to become a proper trap for the insect. Ultimately the particular insect will be acted upon because of the digestive juices, so that ultimately it can be utilized properly. Now what happens is, once the digestive juices will going to act on the insect will be completely gone, the nutrition will be taken up by the plants, and ultimately it will going to open the closed component of the lobe, the closed structure of the lobe will going to open and will be ready for the next set of insect to come in. So that is how the insectivorous plants work. They will going to have some sort of closing container where the digestive juices will be there, hairs will be there to attract the insect, and some juicy and sweet liquid will be there which will going to attract the insect somehow. Ultimately the digestive juices will going to act on the insect and they will get the nutrition. Now the next type of nutrition that we will be looking into is the saprotrophic mode of nutrition, where the particular organism, or you can say the plant, will going to again lack the chlorophyll, so they cannot make their own food. And as it was in the case of parasitic nutrition, the plant has the tendency of acting as a parasite and harming the host. But these particular plants don't have such kind of structure, so they will be depending on dead and decaying organic matter. For example, mushroom and bread mold, where what these plants will going to do, they will going to secrete some or the other digestive juices on dead and decaying organic matter, which will be lying around them or somewhere in the surroundings. And this particular digestive juice will going to ultimately help in converting it into the absorptive form of nutrients, which the plant will going to absorb and fulfill its requirement. Last but not the least is the symbiotic form of nutrition, where one plant and one other section of the plant will going to work in a symbiotic formation, or you can say a mutually dependent combination, where some plants will going to live on the other plant and will going to share the shelter and nutrition. Where one such example that we have is of lichens, which are the pollution indicators as well, because they are going to be grown, or you can say you will going to see them growing only in those areas where there is no pollution. So that is how they act as a pollution indicator. Now in case of lichens, what you will see that it will going to be a component of alga and fungus living together, where alga will be making the food and fungus will be providing the shelter. So that is how it ultimately help in the whole process of helping each other and mutually benefiting each other, from where the term symbiotic nutrition comes in. And this kind of a relation where two individuals in our nature are living all together and helping each other mutually in some or the other way out, this kind of a relationship is known as symbiotic relationship, which is very commonly observed in different set of surroundings and different set of environments depending on the requirements. So that is how it works. Last but not the least, we are going to look into that how exactly the different set of nutrients are replenished in the soil, means they are you can say re-added, or you can say it is regenerated, rejuvenated. So we do have some factors which are going to be responsible in this particular process. One such process will going to be the process where the utilization of different set of manures and fertilizers will be there, because these artificial things, whether we talk about fertilizers which are made in industries or the manures which are being made by the farmers or produced by the farmers by using conventional form of manure formation. These things will going to ultimately help in increasing the nutrients of the soil. On the other hand, we do have some natural and symbiotic processes where ultimately these different set of bacterium, different set of bacteria, different set of organisms all together in mutual relationships will going to ultimately help in replenishing the nutrients of the soil. Now the question comes that why do we have to replenish the soil? Means soil is a natural source, so it should get replenished automatically. But the reality is that when we grow different set of plants on a particular land, the soil will going to continuously be used, and the nutrients inside it will be continuously used. So automatically the nutritional quantity and quality of that particular set of land and soil will going to decrease gradually, which is to be fulfilled and which is to be replenished artificially by some external means that we are going to use so that it can be done properly. With this, we are done with this particular chapter, and till the next session we're going to have a new chapter. So till then, keep learning and stay safe.